drunken tourist tore the iconic hat off a Royal Guardsman, mocking centuries of tradition. The crowd froze, expecting the guard to break. But his shocking response left everyone speechless and taught the tourist a lesson he'd never forget. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We share the untold stories, secrets, and traditions of the British Guards every day. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. It was a crisp London morning, the kind that made the air feel fresh but not quite biting. Tourists clustered outside Buckingham Palace, snapping selfies and chattering in a dozen languages. Amid the orderly chaos, a tall, stoic guardsman stood at his post, a picture of discipline. His polished black boots reflected the pale sunlight, and his red uniform was as immaculate as the palace walls behind him. Atop his head rested the iconic bearskin hat, the embodiment of British tradition and dignity. Enter Rick. Rick, an American tourist who looked like he'd wandered off the set of a bad comedy, was already the loudest person in the crowd. Draped in a Union Jack flag like a parody of patriotism, he clutched a half-empty beer bottle in one hand, his other hand gesturing wildly. His MAGA cap, somehow stained despite its bold red color, perched at an awkward angle on his head. The pièce de résistance? A Hawaiian shirt so garish and beer-stained it seemed to offend the very concept of fashion. Rick was deep into his vacation mode, which apparently involved drinking heavily before noon and assuming the world revolved around him. "Hey, y'all," Rick bellowed, his southern drawl amplified by the beer coursing through his veins. "This is my shot to wear that fuzzy hat. I mean, how hard can it be?" He pointed at the guardsman, who remained as unmoving as a statue, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Rick's equally inebriated friends howled with laughter. "Go for it, Rick," one yelled, phone already poised to record. "Dude, you'll go viral." Now, let's pause for a moment and address the elephant in the room. What kind of person looks at a figure of solemn tradition and thinks, "You know what this needs? Me." Rick, that's who. Fueled by a toxic cocktail of arrogance and lager, he swaggered forward, weaving through the crowd like a bowling ball aimed at a very expensive pin. The guardsman didn't flinch. Not a blink, not a twitch. His face was a masterclass in control, though inside you can imagine a tiny voice thinking, "Ah, another one." Fantastic. Rick stumbled closer, grinning as if he were the star of his own reality show. The crowd began to part, phones at the ready. Some murmured disapproval, others laughed nervously, but most just waited to see how this disaster would unfold. Rick, drunk on more than just beer, staggered toward the guardsman with the confidence of a man who believed his vacation made him untouchable. "Hey, buddy," he slurred, his southern drawl dragging out each syllable like he was the star of his own reality show. "Y'all don't smile, huh? Well, let me give you something to smile about." The guardsman stood firm, his gaze fixed straight ahead, unyielding against the tide of idiocy rolling toward him. His polished composure didn't waver, but you could almost hear his internal thoughts sighing. First, it was the selfie sticks. Now, it's Captain America's beer-bellied cousin. Lovely. Around them, the crowd buzzed with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Phones appeared like magic, eager to document what was sure to be another viral embarrassment for humanity. A few onlookers muttered disapproval, but most were too caught up in the unfolding spectacle to intervene. Rick, naturally, mistook the attention for encouragement. Sensing his moment, he threw his arms wide like a drunk preacher delivering a sermon. "This is history in the making, folks." With a triumphant yell, he lunged forward and, with astonishing audacity, snatched the iconic bearskin hat right off the guardsman's head. The gasp from the crowd was almost deafening. Even the pigeons seemed to pause mid-flight. Rick, oblivious to the weight of his actions, shoved the oversized hat onto his own head. It immediately swallowed half his face, leaving only his beer-soaked grin visible. "Look, y'all," he crowed, striking a clumsy, mock-regal pose. "I'm King of England now." The guardsman, a monument to restraint, remained motionless. But then, with almost imperceptible precision, he shifted his weight ever so slightly, a single, calculated move that sent a ripple of tension through the crowd. It was subtle, but enough to make everyone hold their breath. Rick, in his drunken haze, missed the shift entirely. The crowd, however, was captivated. What would happen next? Phones zoomed in. Whispers turned to murmurs. The scene was poised for chaos, and everyone could feel it. With a grace that betrayed years of unwavering discipline, the guardsman stepped forward. The single, thunderous stomp of his boot reverberated against the palace walls, slicing through the cacophony of murmurs like a knife. The sound commanded immediate attention, silencing the crowd and freezing Rick in place. His drunken bravado drained from his face, leaving him wide-eyed and slack-jawed, much like a deer caught in a hunter's spotlight. "Return the hat," the guardsman said, his voice cold, precise, and cutting. It was the first and only sound he had made all day, but it carried the weight of authority. The crowd inhaled sharply, hanging on the tension that hung thick in the air. This wasn't just a command, it was a reckoning. Rick stammered, his earlier confidence unraveling like cheap thread. "Oh, come on, man," he sputtered, clutching the oversized bearskin hat like it might somehow protect him. "It's just a joke." His southern drawl, once so boisterous, now quivered under the pressure. But the guardsman's gaze didn't waver. His arm extended, palm up, a silent but unmistakable demand for the hat to be returned. Rick's hands shook as he tried to comply, his balance teetering precariously on legs unsteady from both beer and humiliation. He reached out, fumbling to place the hat back. But fate, or more likely his own shoelaces, had other plans. With a dramatic stumble, Rick tripped, his body folding like a poorly planned yoga pose, and he landed flat on his back with a resounding thud. The hat soared gracefully through the air, as if choreographed by the universe itself, and landed perfectly in the guardsman's waiting hand. The crowd erupted, a wave of laughter and applause crashing over the scene. Phones captured every humiliating second, the cameras merciless in their documentation of Rick's downfall. His friends were doubled over, tears streaming down their faces as they howled at their fallen comrade. The guardsman, however, didn't so much as crack a smile. He returned the hat to its rightful place on his head, adjusted it with measured precision, and resumed his post as if nothing had happened. If dignity could take physical form, it would look like this. Rick, sprawled on the ground, seemed to finally grasp the gravity of his actions. But for the guardsman, it was just another day at Buckingham Palace. As Rick lay sprawled on the ground, trying to gather what was left of his dignity, the guardsman returned to his post. He adjusted the bearskin hat on his head with a precision that could only be described as regal. The guardsman's internal monologue chimed in. And that, my dear audience, is why you don't mess with the hat. Meanwhile, Rick's misadventure was already being uploaded to every social media platform imaginable. By the next day, the video of his tumble was trending under hashtags like #hatfail and #guardjustice. Rick, now a viral sensation for all the wrong reasons, spent the rest of his trip trying to avoid any further embarrassment. However, he did receive one souvenir he hadn't expected, a stern letter from the palace's security team, reminding him of the importance of respecting British traditions. The guardsman, of course, remained unbothered. Another day, another tourist, another lesson learned. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and let us know in the comments which guard tradition you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video.